Yeah. Hello, my creative friends. Today we're going to talk about drums in Ableton. How to use a drum rack. How to do drums. How to get started for beginners. So if you are not a beginner, get the fuck out of here. You could stay. Let's go, man. First things first, guys. You need drums. So in Ableton, if you go to the drums category, in this folder here where it says drum hits, you can open that up. There's a bunch of little subfolders. So Ableton has drums, but like, get you some of your own drums, because everyone has Ableton's drums. Here's what I would recommend doing. I would get a Splice account. Go to splice.com, make yourself an account, and now this is what Splice looks like. If I search in Splice, like dirty kick, check this out. Boom, kicks. And essentially, you click on the plus button here, you download them, and then you have them. Now what you're going to need to do, if you don't have this already, you're going to need to make a new folder. On your desktop, in your documents, I'm going to call it samples. Okay? Name samples is already taken. Yeah, it's because I already did this. But guys, look, you got a folder called samples. Inside of this folder you just made, I want you to make a couple more folders inside of there. Maybe one called drums, one called FX, one called music. That should cover you for most things. Don't worry about FX and music right now. I just want you to have those. But as far as the drums subfolder, open it up and create these subfolders within there. Maybe take a screenshot of this moment. 808s, claps, crash, hats, kicks, open hats, perk, rims, snaps, snares, and maybe you would have toms. Maybe you'd even have floor tom, mid tom, high tom. I don't know. Now, download something from Splice by clicking on the plus button. I'm going to click on this plus button right here. And I've now downloaded that kick. I'm going to drag that sample that I just downloaded. I'm going to drag it into my kicks folder. Now what you're going to do, go back here, and I am going to drag drums straight into Ableton's My Shit area. If you haven't been watching my other videos, what is Ableton's My Shit area? It's right here where it says places. And if I could change it to say My Shit, I would, but I can't. It's gonna have to just be places, but we're gonna call it My Shit. And what you're gonna do is drag drums straight over into the My Shit area, right there where underneath current project, you could drag it and drop it right there. Now, instead of going to Ableton's drums category, from now on, you could just go to your drums folder right here, which is gonna have all those little subfolders you made in it. Kicks, anything you downloaded, okay? The other way you can do this is by going to like Reddit. Like if I search right here, Trap Drum Kit 2024 Reddit. If I search that, look at this. 2024, 400 plus drum sounds made from scratch. Amazing. Then you could download those, drag it into Ableton's My Shit area just as easily. When it comes to starting with this here, most producers in all genres will start with music before they add drums. If you want to start with drums, you want to just start with making drum beats, by all means, you creative motherfucker. It's just that like 90% of the time, there's a lot of reasons for why it makes sense to put music in first. I won't go into them right now, but I promise. That being said, I'm gonna go back to Splice. Great. It says 90 in its title here. So I know it's in 90 BPM. So I'm just gonna go ahead and preemptively change my BPM in my project to also be 90 right here. I'm just gonna drag this straight from Splice into my project. There we are. Now I've got this in my project. I'm also gonna shift this up one, move that up, because I just want to look at it that way. Now let's listen to this here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn my metronome on real quick, because before you start adding drums, you always want to make sure that they are on the grid so that you can avoid any problems. So I'm just going to turn my metronome on here. Listen real quick. We're good. I'm going to turn my metronome back off. We are going to go up here to categories, instruments. Click on instruments, and in there you've got something called the drum rack right there. It looks like it needs to be like clicked on this little area. It does not. You can just drag this whole thing onto an empty MIDI track. If you do not already have an empty MIDI track in your project, press Command Shift T, and it will give you a new MIDI track, at which point you can go to instruments here, drag drum rack onto that empty MIDI track right there, drop it right in there. And now you'll see we've got this drum rack. What I would recommend doing, guys, is taking whatever your music is and basically select the amount of space by clicking in the grid and selecting all of it and put that on a loop. Press Cmd L. Now it's on a loop. The reason we're doing that is because we are going to play it while we go through our drums folder and just see what sounds sound good while it plays. I'll show you like this. What you're going to do is you're going to click back on your drum rack track and you're going to start dragging a couple of your favorites from your folder onto these drum cells in here. I like to usually have 3 or 4 that I think sound good with the song. I'm just going to grab 3 or 4 random ones right now. Here's one, dragged it right onto that cell. I'm going to grab a couple others. I'm going to drag this one. I'll drag this one onto a drum cell. And I'll drag this one onto a drum cell. Now look at this. I've got 4 kicks ready to go. I usually like to leave a row of nothingness in between all my rows. There are reasons for that. We will discuss that another time. Just leave a row of empty space. So here's what I might do. Now I'm gonna press play again. It's on loop. Go to my claps folder here, and I'm just clicking on them once. Okay. I like that one. I'll drag that in the drum rack. What else we got? Great. I'll drag that. I'll drag that one. I'll drag that one. Now I've got a row of kicks and claps. Now at this point, if you're following the rule of skip a row, to add any more shit, there's no more space. Let me show you. Over here, guys, do you see all of these miniature drum cells in this like preview area? Well, these are all different groups of 16 drum cells. Right now, we're clicked in this group right here. But if I scroll up and I click, look at that, boom, I got a whole new group. So that's now the group that I'm going to populate. I'm gonna go through my hats. I'll grab 4 hats for each one. Boom. I'm just going to do this until I've basically used everything in my folders, except for 808. We are going to deal with 808s next video. For now, I'm just going to populate all these. So I'm going to cut it right now to when I have them all. Okay, so I now have a row of kicks, a row of claps, a row of hi-hats, a row of open hi-hats. I've got a row of rims, snares, and a couple of perk. Once we're in the drum rack and we've got all our sounds, what you're going to want to do is go over to these 2 knobs right over here. One of these says volume is less than velocity. One says volume. I find that 70 is a good value for this knob right here, volume less than velocity. So whenever I make a new drum rack, I turn that into 70. And then I want that value to be for all of the drums in my whole drum rack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on that knob that I just turned to 70. I'm going to scroll up until I see copy value to siblings. And I'm going to click it. Next, I'm going to go to my volume. I'm going to turn that to 0. And then I'm going to right click on that volume knob. And I'm going to go to copy value to siblings. The reason we do this is because we need things to be velocity adjustable. We need it to be, if I want my hi-hat to be really loud or really soft, it can be. So we're giving it some wiggle room by putting it to 70. And then as far as the volume knob, we're just basically making it so that the native volume of the sample is at 0. Ableton puts it at -12 because, to be totally honest, so many of these samples are so loud that you're going to download that when you start adding them together, your track is immediately going to be blowing out the speakers. I prefer to physically move the volume knob of my actual track in Ableton right here, the volume knob. I prefer to move that down. I'm going to need to move it down by quite a bit, literally -12. We're basically just setting ourselves up here. Now that you've done all of that, what you want to do is create a MIDI region so that you can draw these drums. I'm going to click there on my drum rack track. I'm going to select the amount of space that this is. Command Shift M. At this point, guys, you will now see all the names of everything that you put in your drum rack right here. This is how we get to it. What we want to do is have our little headphone button right there. Pretty subtle little button, but we usually want to have it on. I'll turn it off to show you why we want to have it on. If I start drawing in here, and I'm putting sounds, I can't hear any of them. I'm working blind. If I put my headphone button on, boom, now I hear things as I create a drum pattern. I can hear what sound I'm currently working with. Before I show you how to program stuff in here, understand this. If you ever want to get back to your drum rack because you realize, ooh, I want to add a different sample because none of these actually work, or I want to put effects on the sample. If you ever need to get back to your drum rack track, bottom right, I call it Baby Ableton. Right down here, guys, if you click on that, that brings you back to your drum rack so you can mess around. If you click to the rectangle on the left, it's going to bring you back to your piano roll where you can draw. So again, back and forth, I can click on these if I ever need to see a different view on the screen. Now that we've got our headphone button on, drawing notes is very, very simple. You're just double clicking on spaces. So I'm going to look here. I'm going to look for a clap. There's a clap. I'm going to double click on a space where I want the clap to be. So right there. Maybe I'll change it to another clap here. Let's find one that actually sounds more like a clap. There we go. I know that I want this to be on all of the 2s and 4s, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So I look up at my grid here, and we see 1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. I'm going to make sure that I put a clap on all of the 1.2, 1.4, 2.2, 2.4. And to move things around, without needing to double click every time, like that, we can just hold Option and move the first one around. I'm holding Option, and I'm just going to move like that. Okay? Now to go even faster, we're going to want to duplicate. The way we do that, grab everything. I know I did it right because this line will be the length of the 2 bars which I have currently programmed. At this point, I can press Cmd D for duplicate. Cmd D. And now, you get it. Grab everything and Cmd D. This is usually how I would do it from the very first one I draw. So like, I got nothing, about to make drums. I decide I want that. I'm going to grab from here, select back, make sure I've got that line, and I'm going to Cmd D all the way through. This is how I would usually do, just Cmd D, 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 D. Okay, wonderful. I'm going to add a couple more things and cut. You know, a little something. Okay, essentially, guys, I just added some more stuff. This is why you want to kind of fill your drum rack up with a bunch of fun shit that you can play with. Once you have the semblance of a loop, what you might want to do is mess around with the velocities. Now, if you want to get like granular and really see it, what you're going to want to do is go down to your, right here, it says velocity. You're going to want to go into that area where there's all those dots. Those represent the volumes of each note. Now, what I want to do is I want to scroll up a little bit until I see the bracket right on that line. And I'm going to go like that so that I can really see the velocities of all these notes. And I'm going to make some decisions. Like, I think that the clap should be louder. So I'm going to find that clap. And this is why we have our headphone button on. So that when I go like this, I hear the clap. Without the headphone, no clap when I scroll on it. So if I click on that clap, then I go to my velocity area. There it is. It's showing me which one it is. So I'm going to raise the velocity of that a little bit, like this. Make it a little louder. And I want that to be on all of them. So I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to drag this there. And at this point, I'll say let's grab those 2 only and duplicate until this loop is over. There we are. Now I also layered my clap with a snare. Not sure if that's the right snare. Let's see if maybe another snare layered together with it would sound better. We'll try that one. I kind of like it alternating. I kind of like it being that clap and snare combo this time, but this clap and snare combo this time. But maybe with this snare, if I grab it, go to the velocity, maybe with that one a little lower in velocity. Just playing here. So I'm just going to grab from bar 2. I'm going to grab both of those. Make sure my line is good here. And I'm going to duplicate. Cmd D, D, D. Now I happen to notice that because I didn't delete my old snares, the old one is still there. And I know that's not supposed to be there. So I'm going to double click, get rid of that. Anytime I see that in here now, I'm scrolling, I'm going, oh, there's one. Nope. Where else? Where else? Right there. Get rid of it. I'm gonna go back to my drum rack real quick. What I want to do is maybe mess around with individual samples in here. One idea is I think that the hi-hat should be maybe a little bit brighter. I'm gonna look right in here, and I'm gonna look for which one I believe to be my hi-hat, because they're all gonna light up yellow when I press play. I see one constantly being played right there. So I'm gonna click in there, and I'm gonna guess, there it is, look, hi-hat. See that? So I'm gonna click on that hi-hat. Now, if you go to audio effects in your categories, you can grab any audio effect. In this case, I'm gonna grab an EQ, and I can drag it directly from there onto the drum cell which I want to affect, at which point I can tweak those parameters. For now, that's fine. You could do this with anything. I could go to drive and color, and I could drag a saturator and drag it onto a kick drum cell, whatever I want to do. At this point, let's say that, you know, this is a pretty good drum rack. I'd like to maybe use this for other songs. Well, the way you're going to do that is right up here by where it says drum rack. If you scroll over to the right, what you'll see is a floppy disk icon. You can click on that. You will see this come up, and you can give it a name. So I'm gonna call this Ableton Video Drum Rack and press enter. If I were to start a new project, now I could go to instruments, and instead of dragging drum rack on, if I want, I could open up that little folder and look what's there. Our new friend that we just made. And now instead of dragging drum rack onto the track, I can drag this onto the track, and it'll already be these drums. Now, it won't be the pattern of these drums. The other way that you can do drums is by making several MIDI tracks and putting all of the different elements, like making a kick drum rack, making a snare drum rack. So here's how I might do that. Create a new MIDI track. I'm thinking, well, this can be the kick drum rack, an entire drum rack of just kicks. I'll make a new MIDI track again. This can be the snare. Make a new one. That could be the hat. You guys get the point. The idea now is I'm going to drag a drum rack onto each of these MIDI tracks. I'm going to preemptively name each one of these what I intend for it to be. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to Command R for rename, and I'm just going to call this kick. I'm going to call this one snare. Now what I can do is I can go to my drums folder, and let's say I want to open up the kicks folder. If I click on the top kick, and then I scroll all the way down to my last kick, if I hold shift and I click on the last kick, they are all selected. When you hold shift, it selects multiple things. So what I can do is I can drag this selection of all these kicks onto this drum rack, and look what happens. All those kicks are now available. I always want to go to volume velocity, 70. Enter. I'm going to right click on that knob, copy value to siblings. I'm going to go to volume 0, enter, right click, copy value to siblings. Now I've got a whole group of kicks. Essentially, now I'm just going to program the kick pattern on this track, then the snare pattern on this one, the hat pattern on this one. This is just another way to do it where you have more options. The last way to do this is to say fuck it, okay? And just use audio tracks instead of a drum rack. What I mean is this. Instead of making a new MIDI track, which I would do if I wanted to by pressing Command-Shift-T, I'm just going to press Command-T instead, and it's going to make a new audio track, Command-T. And guys, check this out. Without using a drum rack at all, I can drag a kick straight from my folder into my project. And instead of using the piano roll, I can do this. I'm holding Option, okay? And now I'm making... Okay, Command T, this is going to be my clap. I'm going to name them just because if you're getting into it, start naming stuff because it's clappo. I'm going to go to claps, go like this. You see what I'm saying? Honestly, I find myself doing this, to be honest with you, more often. But I think drum rack is a great way to learn, and also it's probably a better way to do it when all is said and done. I've just gotten used to doing it this way personally. Guys, that is pretty much it. As far as 808s are concerned, I will show you that in the next video. But I will give you a little preview by undoing many times until I've got our drum pattern back in this bitch. And I'll do an 808 real quick. Edit. Yeah, yeah, yo, spitting dumb raps while I'm teaching y'all about drum racks. Hopefully that shit's a major win, and you don't gotta be too frustrated in Ableton. That was probably the best 4 bars I got out of the last 8 freestyles I did. Guys, have fun.